So Diane, let's pray this morning. Thank you, Father, for this time, for your great love for us. We deem this time as a divine appointment, Jesus, that you have brought us to this hour to accomplish your purposes, and we thank you for that. We bind the enemy from our presence. We break any assignment that he is trying to send our way, and we declare today that greater are you in me and Diane than he that is in the world. And we cancel his appointments. We cancel his assignments. We cancel anything to do with him and say to him, be gone. We ask your cleansing power in and through this room and throughout our time together. Lord, I ask in Diane's life that you would bring up the things that you choose to heal, Lord, at this time. Thank you for her and her willingness to do this. So, Lord, give us a good time together, a revealing time together, and a healing time together in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, Diane, let's get going. In history, we are going after some specifics. And in history taking, I'm going after particularly three things. As you describe something to me that I believe that needs to be pursued, I'm going to ask you three questions. How did that make you feel? And you've got your feeling word list. So I'm going to ask you to refer to that. I might point out a category, or I might let you choose that category and ask you for words out of that. You will see, for instance, look at the category angry. You will see that there are different intensity levels of anger. To be sore means you're not very angry, but something has ruffled and bothered you. Irritated, agitated shows a deeper level of anger. But bitter, enraged shows a very deep anger. So in all of the categories, you will see those types of intensity levels. And to the best that you can, I want you to be describing what it is that you felt yourself, not about the other person. That's very important. How did what happened make you feel? And then I'm going to ask you, what did that say about you as a person? We know that we have God-given needs, and that means that needs that only God can fulfill in our lives. Love, acceptance, worth, and security. And we also know that we're complete in Christ, that God's already done that. But the reason why we get into, quote, trouble sometimes is that we forget that. And we let our feelings take over us. And the feelings are all connected to a lie that we're believing. If the truth sets us free, then it's a lie that holds us in bondage. And so the lie is usually connected to a deficit in the God-given needs. Love, acceptance, worth, and security. I'm unloved, I'm unlovable. I'm unaccepted, I'm unacceptable. I'm unworthy, I'm worthless. I'm better than everybody else. Or I'm insecure. In history, we're not so much looking for the positives. If Jesus said he didn't need to heal the ones that were well, then those places in us that have broken our hearts, that make us believe that we're not whole, those need to be healed. And so history, sometimes people will comment, wow, it seems so negative. And it is, because it's the negative things that need to be healed. The third thing is, I'm going to ask you, how did you cope? Did you just withdraw? Did you get busy and escape some kind of way? And certainly coping can change over the years. The way you cope as a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum, hopefully is not the way you cope today. Although people will connect it in if they have rage problems. They will go, wow, that was even from early on when I didn't get my way. So we want to look at that. How did you cope 0 to 10? And then you're able to connect the dots. Wow, how am I coping today? Is it just some more escape? Is it just some more control? Is it more pride, there's nothing wrong with me? Is it denial of anything? Or is it, I'm self-righteous and better, and I'm going to criticize you to make myself feel better, and I'm judgmental? There's a lot of flesh that we can turn to. So I'm going to be asking you specifically, how did you cope with what we have just pulled out and we need to explore? In God's design of the family, Diane, there is a, quote, perfect design, obviously. And oh, that it would be so on earth. But because of the fall of man, it just isn't. Father was designed to be the leader of the home, the spiritual leader. A spiritual leader leads, he guides, he counsels. He does a lot of things to help us and show us the way, so to speak. In other words, he is that emulation of God in the home. Mom does not have a lower than role, but she has a role that comes alongside Dad. It's a different role, but it's not a subservient role. There's lots of teaching out about submission. The word submission, and it comes from actually a Hebrew depth of meaning. And in Hebrew language, there's so many word pictures that are beautiful. And the word submission actually means to get in, as if someone is coming in to our innards, our spirit being, and holding us up and lifting us up. What a beautiful picture. Because that brings stability, that brings connection, that brings the deepest kind of love when you're willing to get in there and hold up someone throughout thick and thin. But unfortunately, maybe that happened for you, but it doesn't happen for a lot of people. So we're going to talk about Dad, and we're going to talk about Mom and her role as a nurturer. She's also a guide in the home. We're not talking about roles. Everybody's supposed to be doing dishes, and everybody's supposed to be cooking, not like Mom does the inside of the house and cooks and cleans, and Dad does the outside. Mm-hmm. We know that's not true. But there's a lot of teaching out there that could affect that also. We know that you in the home as a child was to be brought up in the ways of the Lord, so to speak, guided toward dependence on Jesus Christ. For some of us that happened and happened well, and some of us that didn't happen at all. So I'm going to investigate that with you as we go, and that's going to help you for this present day situation continue to connect some dots for you in order to work through the present day struggle. And I say that honestly because when we look at that life system in this process, we call it life system, life messages, which was taught in the workshop, we see that we're always tempted, no matter what. We're going to do what's called diagramming, a flesh diagram today, where we're going to put your history in black and white according to who sent those messages, the feelings, the beliefs, and the coping. And there it is in black and white. Now that our flesh is not who we are, but it affects what we do. And because of that, we need to understand the strategy of the enemy against us. If the Lord Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. God, love of God, He loved us, and we can love Him, so we can love Him. We need to love ourselves before we even love others, because if we don't, then we're going to come up needy or needy of someone trying to meet a need or trying to get their needs met out of us, and we let them. So God, self, and others. A love relationship. A love relationship. So once again, that's done well in some people's lives, and in others, there are deficits, and so that's what we're going to be seeking today. I'll remind you, and that's not to stifle you in any way of anything that you want to tell me, but I'm going to be directing your thoughts. So I really don't need a lot of detail unless you choose to tell me something out of that importance. I don't want to minimize that at all. So if I ask a question too quickly, please, I want you to say, I just need to tell you something more about that. And I'll be glad to certainly listen to that and take note of that. So we're going to start with Dad today. And I will ask you, is Dad still with us? Is he still alive?
No.
Your bio dad, okay?
No.
All right. Tell me about Dad. Who was Dad to you?
Well, I had two dads.
Okay.
My biological father, my mother divorced when I was 6 months old, so I really never had the opportunity to really get to know my biological father. I met him one time when I was 8 years old, and it was a very interesting meeting. He promised to come back with a carload of toys, and I'm still waiting on that.
No, okay.
So, biological father, I didn't really have the opportunity to know. I was raised by my stepfather.
All right. Let me ask you how that made you feel as you were growing up to know that, wow, Dad's not here. Now, you may not have been as aware of that until 8, but tell me that, were you aware of that?
Yeah, I was actually quite reminded of it
Okay.
on occasion by my grandmother especially, and just people listening. I was constantly listening, even though, you know, at an early age, I kind of, you know, children are to be seen and not heard, so I'm always kind of around listening to what they had to say. So
Okay.
I definitely heard a lot about him,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
their opinions.
Good. Let's talk about feelings, and then we're gonna see what your assessment is of what other people were saying. Tell me, how did that make you feel? Dad's not around, and I'm hearing all these things.
Very unimportant, confused, and hurt and abandoned, I guess, all of the above.
All right. Did rejection or feeling rejected ever enter that picture at that time?
Definitely rejected.
Okay.
Definitely.
Any of the big ones, unloved, anything like that?
By him, by my biological father, yes, definitely unloved.
Okay. Anything else? Look at your list, or just anything else that you have come across in thinking this through.
I just felt an emptiness with him, like a big hole, an abyss, something you couldn't get to the bottom of. There was always that confusion.
Okay. What did you believe about yourself because of those negative feelings?
Early on, I really didn't think about it a lot because I did have a stepfather that was good to me. But I think taking in 0 to 10, probably by the time I was 10 and after the meeting and when I was 8, I guess I felt, I felt totally confused. And yeah.
So did that feeling become a message, I am confused? Or what was the message there?
I think the message is I'm not good enough. We're not worth anything. Especially after meeting him, and then the fact that he never came back.
Oh yes, how hurtful that
right.
was.
Yeah.
And so let's just go to that 8-year meeting. I know there's plenty in between here, but we're there. Tell me the feelings from that meeting.
Well, I was surprised by him because I felt like he was a very sensitive, very loving person. But then making the promises and then not fulfilling the promises, it was a very much, I got the feeling of worth there, that unworthy and unlovable, very confused as to why he would feel that way about me and my sister as well, because I have a sister. So yeah, it was very confusing because he seemed like a nice, very gentle-natured, fun, talented person, and so I was quite excited getting to meet him and even visiting family members in Hamilton, Ohio. We lived in Union City, Indiana, 68 miles away, and it was kind of fun going to meet family members, and so I just had that sense of family. But he never came back. So it's an untrusting then. I guess I got an untrust message. I just don't trust people. You know, I can perceive him to be wonderful, but he actually isn't because he didn't go back. So that kind of set in an untrust.
Sure. All right. anything before that 8-year meeting that you could use to describe him? I mean, see, he simply just wasn't there, but anything?
Well, just stories, listening to other people
Oh,
talk about the situation and why they divorced. And so basically I just heard that he was no good and that he couldn't take care of us. We were starving and we were all kinds of things like that. So needless to say, up to the 8-year or the meeting at 8 years old, I was very confused. So yeah, it sent.
and then once you met him and he is sensitive and loving and gentle-natured and fun and talented.
Totally confused me. Totally confused me, because I thought the person that I hear them talk about is definitely not the person that's in front of me that I'm meeting. So what's the dynamics here? What's the problem? And so I guess that's when confusion did set in, because I was, at 10 years old, you can't really, or at 8 years old, you really can't work that out in your head. So I think as an 8-year-old, I took that as a blame. I must not have been good enough at that, the time spent with him. Going to my grandparents, I remember, meeting my biological grandmother. His mother for the first time was probably the first time I ever heard about prayer or God was spending the night there, and she prayed for me and my for her younger daughter, which was about my age, oddly enough. My biological father had 15 siblings, so or he was one of 15, so it was quite a large family. And that night spent was wonderful and exciting and fun, and there was music. He played the harmonica, they sang. It was wonderful, but that was the first time I ever heard about God, was my grandmother praying for me that night at bedtime.
Wonderful.
And so that part is a very good, warm feeling.
And we're definitely going to revisit that. Let me ask you a question at this point, and if you're ready to answer.
Sure.
I see how possibly this could alter your decision making. Did you realize that at the time? Like, I'm hearing something, but yet I'm seeing something very, very different. So were you able to form a different opinion for him in the moment? And then bam, he doesn't ever show up again.
Yeah.
Confusion.
That time spent with him at his parents' house, I got a totally different picture. The warm, sensitive, fun, talented, and I trusted him. And I just thought, wow, what a nice family. It was a nice family setting.
Sure.
And which was something that I didn't have with my mother and my stepfather. So it was, I wanted that.
Sure.
Definitely wanted that.
Sure.
So.
But was it confusing as far as decision making?
Very confusing.
That you kept coming back to that word confused. Well, how did you cope with all of this, Diane? Not knowing, growing up hearing that this man is no good, he couldn't take care of you, he's untrustworthy, and then you meet him, and then you assess it very differently, and then you go back and, oh my goodness, what they said must have been true after all. How heartbreaking that must have been. Mm-hmm. How did you cope?
I've thought about that often, and I have a series of memories of empty rooms and windows. So I would escape in the early days, and I of course lived in Indiana, so it was cold a lot, and so there was always an empty room, go figure. But I would sit a lot in the empty room and look out through a window, actually, I guess at the time, reaching out to something more. Somehow I knew there had to be something more and something better. So I would be alone a lot. So I guess my coping was getting away, off by myself, and being alone. And then when I was older, or if it's in the summer, then I found myself up climbing trees as high as I could get, and that was my safety.
But still to be alone.
Still to be alone,
Okay.
yeah.
So was it just a time of thinking? Did you read? Or did you watch TV? Or you were just there with you?
More of a time of thinking and trying to figure it out. I feel like I've always been in my head, you know, that committee meeting up there where you're constantly trying to figure out and assess what's going on with your life. Even as a young child, I think I've been in my head a lot
Okay.
with figuring things out, taking care of myself, pretty much.
Okay. And what does take care of yourself look like?
Taking care of my own well-being, my own thought processes, and my own, just in general.
And so that might be, I'm sorry, but that might be from your frame of reference. Is that right?
True. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so what did that look like? My own thought process from my frame of reference.
I guess feeling totally alone and not taken care of. There was not really anyone to take care of me.
Okay.
And so I constantly felt like I had to do that for myself, find a way. And of course, those were, you know, from 8 to 10, you're very limited as far as resources. So I guess I would imagine a lot, and I would escape into my imagination, imagining a better home life, a better family life, a
Sure.
better taken care of. You know, all of the basics, all the foundational things, food, housing, all of the above. I mean, those were constantly in my thoughts, as much as it could for an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old, is to, you know, my surroundings. I was always aware of my surroundings, and
You're living with mom, and so this is
mom and stepfather.
and stepfather as a result of that. But as far, was there any connection to dad's not here? He could make a better life. There's no provision from dad because they you know, one of the things is no good, couldn't take care of us, and so in reference to coping with dad, does that all this still hold true? Escaping for not having a dad. I'll just be a loner and get into my own head and try to make things better in my own head.
Probably so. My stepfather was totally different, though, than my biological father. So after a certain age, I no longer thought of my biological father.
Okay.
Because I did have my stepfather.
So tell me about that. Did you just dismiss him from your thoughts? He didn't come
Yes.
back? Is that buried? What'd you do with the feelings?
Buried him.
Just stuff them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What did you do with dad?
With my stepfather.
Bio dad. No, what'd you do with bio dad?
I pretty much put him out of my thoughts.
So-
That feeling of I'm unimportant to him, so okay,
So just deny.
that's his
just
decision.
denial.
So yeah, basically.
You've got a
Just-
lot of negative feelings here, so there's there a
Sure.
denial of really how much that hurt, maybe?
I'm
I don't want to put
sure.
words in your mouth, but,
I'm sure.
you know, from,
Yeah.
unless you have gone through forgiveness pretty much
Mhm.
and dealt with it, then it's still there.
Mhm.
Was there any vow, any declaration, I will never let him hurt me like this again?
No,
Okay.
that just totally dismissed it from my mind, I think.
Okay.
It was just, yeah, I suppose I got what I needed from my stepfather, so he just was, I just didn't think about it any
Okay.
longer.
Good.
I felt like I couldn't do anything about it, so, you know, so
Mhm.
what's the point in,
So you weren't tempted to try to rescue or fix or control it at any level, you just,
correct. I
Okay.
just put it out of my mind,
Mhm.
basically.
all right. Anything else about dad?
Not really, not with.
And then, one more question. Now, you were, then we're gonna get into this when we get into you know, that meeting with the family was so delightful and
Mhm.
certainly being prayed over by your grandmother. Was there evidence of faith in your dad's life as a believer?
I don't think so. I mean, I didn't pick up from him anything spiritual.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, the spiritual part was totally my grandmother,
Okay.
who I guess was a devout Christian until the day she died. She worked with the Salvation Army Church and very devoted and, you know,
So this is a part of it that we'll follow in just a minute. Did you keep up with his mother, your grandmother, or did she
No.
keep up with you?
No,
No, nobody did.
no, yeah.
Okay, all right. Anything else about Dad? And certainly we're free to go back if anything else triggers something. Anything else right now that you can think of?
Not 0 to 10 years old. I can't think of anything that would have come up during that time.
But not having ever seen your dad again, there's no possibility of a dad then and a dad now. You may have heard some different things, but in your mind, is it still, when you look back at Dad, is it still pretty much, you never connected with him again, he never saw you again? Is this still pretty much the picture that you have of Dad?
No, it's recently changed because I did have a family member get in touch with me, and, you know, I shared that with you at the family reunion
Okay.
just a few months back. So my opinion of him has changed considerably. And because I'm more aware of the actual circumstances. But that just came in the last few years, so,
Right.
you know, but I never did see him again, you know, and for years just dismissed him out of my mind and dismissed family and what biological family that I could have. So, yeah, my opinion has changed drastically from meeting with his only living sibling just a few months ago, so.
And just
That's
enlighten
a
me,
little
I would
different.
like to just hear your opinion of him now, as opposed to what it was. That's just, I think, a good thing to leave this on. So what's your opinion of Dad now?
My opinion of my biological dad now is that I think he did what he thought was best at the time. And of course, you know, I being a Christian in grace and just taught that, I see where there was a lot of dynamics going on that I had no idea. Every time he did try to reach out, from my understanding, my mother was threatening with suing him for back alimony and jail and all kinds of things. So I think there was a lot of that going on. So it had nothing really to do with me as a person. It was more to do with the adults and what was going on there.
So
But
may I clarify,
opinion-
excuse me, just 1 second. So he did try to get in touch with you?
He-
Oh, I mean, through your mother, so he did try.
In the
Okay.
early days, yeah, with, there again, just listening to what was going on, I would hear threats of, if he ever comes this way, I'll have him slammed, put in jail, and so, yeah. So I believe that he did try, and at times I know my Aunt Annie stayed in touch with the Johnsons because she still lived in Hamilton, Ohio, where they all lived. So she sent pictures to him and updates that way. So I see now where he really did care, but I feel that he was kind of trapped in his own thoughts and his own fears. And so the reaching out kind of bothers me still a little bit, because I think, you know, he didn't die until 97. And so that kind of bothers me a little, because I feel like, you know, by then, I'm an adult, my sister's an adult, we're not gonna sue him for alimony. You know, there's not
Right.
that kind of thing going on, so why did they not try to reach
Sure.
out and find us? So there's still a little unraveling there and a little processing there that I do.
Absolutely.
But my opinion of him as far as being no good and, you know, outlaw, which I didn't go into, but all kinds of things like that, that's totally not there any longer.
Good.
I have more of a sympathy, or maybe not sympathy, but I have more of an understanding.
Empathy.
Empathy.
Understanding his heart.
Yes.
A little more.
Exactly, because when sharing about him with my cousins, and especially the one that reached out and found us, he said that he was a warm, sensitive, loving, just exactly what I got from him.
Yeah, that's what you
Yes.
assessed from him. That's awesome.
Exactly, and they talked about how ingenious he was. He could make something out of nothing. He was very delightful, loved children, which really stuck in my mind. A love of children, all of the kids, you know, of all of these siblings. He would just make over and love over, and you know, if I go into the psychology of that, I think, well, he was probably showering that love that he couldn't give to his own kids. He's giving to all of the others.
Good.
So, yes, I have a different understanding and even a bit of love there that stirs up on occasion, and maybe that is just a mixture of the empathy I have and the understanding of his background and how he was raised. And so it's definitely a different, I don't harbor any bitterness or any kind of ill feelings.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that comes with your healing. Well, thank you for that.
It
I just
does.
wanted to see where that led. All right, you said bio dad. I really would like to go to mom first and then back to bio dad.
Okay,
Can we do that?
sure.
All right. And is mom still with us?
No,
And when did mom die?
in 1990.
So mom died quite some time before he died. He didn't die in 1997. So I see what
Correct.
you mean about that. He had 7 years even without having to
Correct.
even contend with your mom if he chose to get in touch.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be hard, Diane. I totally get that. Well, would you describe your mom, and is there a mom then and a mom now? Sometimes that happens in growing up. And did she change in her latter years or anything like that? Was there?
Absolutely.
Okay. Tell me about mom growing up, 0 to 10.
0 to 10, very turbulent. Those were, the home
She
life.
was turbulent, or the home life was turbulent?
The home life was turbulent. She was very unstable, very self-centered, and the home life centered around, it was all about her. And so, yeah, it was very, very dysfunctional. She and my stepfather definitely did not get along. I used to describe it, and this is not as hard for me to describe now as it was a few years back, but I would describe my home life as the Burning Bed movie with Farrah Fawcett, all but the burning part of it. You know, mom and that was my stepfather and my mother's relationship in a nutshell. Very, very, very turbulent.
So how's little Diane feeling about all this? How did you feel about yourself in relationship to mom? Would you look at your feeling word list and
Very, I think I was hurt most of the time. And the home life was very painful. Again, confused, bewildered.
okay, look at that confused column. Let's pull some things out of that confused column. We didn't do that with Dad, but I think now we can probably do that and see that in a little better depth.
A lot of these, the baffled, bewildered, paralyzed at times, perplexed, stuck and stunned, troubled, definitely troubled, uncomfortable. Yeah, that's very much, very much how I felt. And
What?
helpless as well.
Okay.
Helpless.
Why? What was mom doing?
Well, definitely no attention to myself or my brother.
So no emotional contact.
There's no, yes. She would constantly say she loved us, but there was no nurturing, and there wasn't really any She didn't seem concerned that we were watching and listening to what was going on between she and my stepfather. She didn't seem a bit concerned about that, which was very troubling. And I constantly felt like I had to protect my little brother, so I was the adult pretty much in the family, and would take him off to my little hideaways, you know, to shelter his ears from hearing what was going on. And so, yeah, it was very turbulent home life.
Mhm. So some coping there is to rescue him then, right?
Rescue him, definitely,
Caretake
Protect him.
situation, right?
Caretake.
Protector.
yes. Always felt responsible for my little brother.
Was there any drugs or alcohol in the home? Is there anything?
Alcohol,
Oh.
no drugs.
She drank.
She drank, my stepfather drank.
And did things get really bad when that was going on? Or
Oh,
was that a cause of it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Talk to me about Mom's drinking then. How did that make you feel?
Scared and frightened and definitely unnoticed, definitely.
So that was a part of her.
Unprotected, but definitely wasn't protected.
So that was a part of her dysfunction in her instability
Correct,
and her self-centeredness.
correct.
So when did things change, Diane? You mentioned that there perhaps was a then and a now. There wasn't so much with your biological father, except that one meeting, and then it kind of went back. So what about Mom? So this was early years. How long did this go on?
Pretty early. I know we're exploring 0 to 10, but at 13, I was invited to a little hayride connected to the little Assembly of God church down the street. We lived like 2 blocks from it. And so I gave my heart to the Lord at age 13.
Okay.
And so that made all the difference in the world in everything with my life. And my mother followed in 1962.
How long after you were saved?
Well, from 13 was probably what? I can't do the math. Probably a couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of years after, if that long. She almost died in the hospital. She had a surgery that she ended up getting an infection.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she laid there and remembered praying, Lord, if you let me see the sunrise, I'll change my life. I won't, I don't want to die with all my kids think of me as how pretty I look going out to the bars. She definitely made that decision. And of course she did see the sun come up, and she went to the church with me after that and gave her heart to the Lord and became a totally different mother.
Describe that for me. Who was she to you after 13?
She became what I thought a mother should be. Very protecting, very loving, very understanding. It was all about her kids then and what she could do with them and for them and how she could make life better for us. And she was more loving and more kind and just more touchy and huggy and you know, everything that you would want after that. So definitely asking the Lord into her heart made a change.
So she lived
Change in
into
her
your
life.
adulthood, and so that really made.
Yes.
She's only been gone 20 years, so
Exactly.
that made an
Oh,
impact.
made a totally difference. As a matter of fact, my daughter just looks at her grandmother as her hero.
Sure.
She has no idea of the difference, you know. Of
Certainly.
course, she's heard, but yeah. So that's what a complete change that happened in her life. It definitely made a difference, and it made a difference in my thought processes too.
Okay.
So.
Wow. I'm sure. So how did that thought process turn around so far just in relationship to Mom. I asked you what kind of messages, and it came out protecting and taking care of a brother. Before this change, what did you believe about yourself in relationship to Mom?
Before the change, I felt like I didn't matter at all. I very unnoticed and unloved and just invisible.
Okay. I am unnoticed, I am invisible.
Mhm.
And then certainly things after that became very different.
Yes, I felt like all of a sudden she saw me, and all of a sudden she was listening and protecting, and so yeah, that made me feel more accepted too,
Sure,
I guess.
sure. Good. Anything else about Mom?
No, not really. It's for the fact that God changed her total life, made me, and I had quite a few years with that changed woman
Yes.
and that changed person, which I think in me gave me hope for other people in the same situation. And, yeah, so that just turned what should I say, a paradigm shift in my whole life.
Yes.
Just to see that
Sure.
miracle working grace of God,
Absolutely.
how He worked, and all those prayers, unknown prayers that I put out those empty windows that actually worked, and God actually did hear me.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
yeah.
Well, that's an incredible story. Okay, Diane, the next person that we're going to do in history is your stepdad.
Okay,
You ready to do stepdad?
certainly.
And his stepdad's still with us.
No.
Okay, when did he die?
Oh my goodness. Well, actually, 1990. He died within 6 months of my mother.
Oh, okay. Now, did they stay married? I understand there was a lot of conflict early, but did they stay married?
No, they didn't.
Oh, okay. How long did that marriage last?
Till I was 30. So,
Okay.
so
Even
quite a
after her
few years,
conversion?
yes.
Okay.
And it was still turbulent because Dad didn't become a Christian. So it was still turbulent, and he would disappear. He would go to Arkansas and places. He was a truck driver, so he had access to all over the country, and he would disappear for a year
Oh, my.
or whatever, and just call and things like that. But it was just a very, very strange, dysfunctional still.
Yeah. Right, 0 to 10, describe stepdad for me.
Well, 0 to 10, it was definitely, as I said before with the other two situations, Mom and bio dad, a very, very turbulent, very unsettling childhood. Mom and Dad would end up fighting, and so they would split up, or I would be hauled off to my grandmother's, or and at my grandmother's house I heard all kinds of interesting things. So we will definitely have
We'll get to her.
We'll get to her.
But character-wise,
But,
personality-wise, who was stepdad to you?
Now my stepfather, as far as his personality with us kids, me, my brother, who was my half brother, and myself. Now my sister, I also have a biological sister from my bio dad, so she was raised with my grandmother, and there again another story. But my stepdad was very jovial, very fun. I never doubted that he loved me as his own. Matter of fact, he made one of his aunts very angry by picking me up and my brother like flour sacks and leaving their house because they called me and my sister stepchildren, and he never allowed that word in his house. So that's how protective he was. So I always felt loved by him, and he would sing little songs and how much do I love you, a bushel and a peck and a hug around the neck. I mean, he was very, very loving, and I guess that's why I say I didn't really give my biological father much thought after those years, because I really feel that my stepfather filled some of that for me.
You felt accepted by him?
Absolutely.
Didn't have to perform next to
No.
get any of that? Great.
No, he always cooked for us when he was home. It was always that, Daddy's gonna make up some food that's gonna stick to your ribs, and I'm gonna do this for you kiddies, and so it was always, he was always pulling us together, and he was the warm fuzzy. So,
That you described your mother as not being.
correct.
But even at that, is he a person that you could emotionally connect to talk to? Did you express your feelings? Could you ever do
No,
that?
I still felt like I pretty much was the adult.
Okay.
So no.
Tell me what you did believe about yourself in relationship to him. If Dad, there's that not good enough, not worth anything, unimportant that's going on with Dad and Mom. I don't matter. What about stepdad?
No, I felt important to him. I just don't know that he was relational as far as talks or anything. There again, I think in their thinking, kids are to be seen and not heard, and only when you really wanted to have time with them, like he would on the weekends and things like that, and he made those little times special. But as far as being, talking about anything in depth, that never happened.
Spiritually,
No, definitely not spiritual.
did you ever believe him to be a believer?
Not until older years.
Okay,
But
all right.
in those early years, no.
But younger years, not a believer. No
No.
spiritual guidance, so to speak.
Correct.
And so at 13, when you did become a believer, did God open your eyes to even more about him?
I do believe that I had more of an understanding about him and his
Okay.
beliefs and how he was raised. I definitely was always listening to the talking
Sure.
going on, so I heard a lot about what he went through, and of course he was a veteran. Got a Purple Heart,
Oh,
so he was shot 4 times, so there was a lot of dynamics there, and I believe when he came home, that's from the wars, when he met my mother, so I think there was a lot of, the post-traumatic stress, and
sure.
a lot of things like that, so they said he came back a different person, and he would. He'd been shot, and,
Sure, the throes of combat,
Of God.
absolutely. Well, when did he become a
So-
believer?
not until later in years. My husband and I used to travel and sing gospel music, so he would come and listen to us. And so I was probably in my late 20s, maybe early 30s.
So he would have been
So
50s or something.
probably.
But that did not change his relationship with your mom.
No, I think they tried, but it was one of those things, they could never be on the same page at the same time. She's trying, he's not, he's trying, she's not.
So you were older. You said, I'm sorry, you said a minute ago, well, how old were you when they divorced?
About 30, I believe.
Okay.
Maybe a bit.
All right. Did you stay in touch with him?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he
He was daddy.
called constantly.
He was daddy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I've gotten so many positive things. Is there any negative message that was reinforced with him? You've got a lot with bio dad and mom. Anything that was reinforced through his actions or anything?
Well, I think when he drank, he was, I don't know if you would call him a weekend drunk or what, but he would drink when off the truck. When he
Okay.
would come home from his trips, that was his coping mechanism, so he would drink then. And that's when I would have probably the fears, because of the fighting and different things. And when that fighting stopped was when I was 13, and I gave my heart to the Lord, and I stood up between them one time. I remember very, like it was yesterday, getting in between them and saying, you know, to stop, that this is not only hurting me, but also my brother, who had a heart murmur and all kinds of things. And I mean, I was shouting at them, telling them to stop, that this is, you know, if this hurts my brother, it gives him a heart attack, that I'd never forgive him. And, you know, very dramatic situation. And oddly enough, after that, they shut up.
Wow.
And the fighting in front of us,
Mhm.
it did stop. So,
But as far as the 0-10 years growing up, and Dad seems to be the warm fuzzy, and was there? It's almost like, was there a need to cope with him? How did you cope with him?
Again, I would go to my room.
Okay.
I would
When
go
something
to my,
would go down or
yes,
fuss or whatever?
Before that time at 13, yes, I would just disappear into my room and, you know,
That longer thing.
yes, and shelter my ears and
Oh,
try to listen to music or something to just, you know, and
Truly
daydream and
good.
look out the window
Sure.
at a better life, I guess is what I was looking for.
That imagination again.
Yes, imagination.
Good.
So, yeah, but I guess the messages from him was that everything was okay until he drank.
Okay,
So,
but that's
wonderful
yeah.
dad until he drank, and then it was fear.
Mm.
You know, fear and insecurity.
Certainly you're hurt by that,
and-
okay.
Yeah.
And anything else about the parents at all? I assume that, did your bio dad remarry?
That, I don't know if he did or not.
Okay, so you wouldn't have
I
known
don't know.
anyway about
Yeah.
that because you weren't with him. So we've got dad, bio dad, mom and stepdad. Anything else about the parents?
Only the one time, I guess, that would really put a big, definitely a lot of my feelings came into play was I was dropped off at a friend's house, Val and Kenny, who, and this would have been between 0 to 10, because I was like in the 3rd grade. Mom dropped me off at their house and said that I would be staying for a little while, but they would come back to get me when they got their life together and they got an apartment or whatever. Because before that, they of course broke up and there was no way to take care of me, and there was, you know, all kinds of things, no food, you name it, it was going on. But so I was dropped off at Belle and Kenny's house, and remember looking out the door, watching them leave and thinking they would be back in a few days, but the few days turned into a few weeks, which turned into a few months, which turned into a couple of years. So
And these people
Yeah.
are friends?
they're close friends to my mom and my grandmother. And the story there as well is that when this breakup happened, I was taken to my grandmother's with my brother, and of course that's where my sister already lived with my grandmother, and she just would not accept me. She just did not. So
Well, tell me how that made you feel. That okay, so parents are rejecting you by dropping you off and not coming back. No explanation, and grandmother the same. So let's talk feelings and messages with this, please.
very unimportant. Something was wrong with me, obviously, because they'll take my brother, and my sister already has a place to be at my grandmother's. So there's something desperately wrong with me. So what that message just said, I'm very unimportant. I'm broken. I'm not acceptable. I'm definitely not loved because I'm farmed out, so to speak.
Sure.
It isn't the right words, but given away. Felt like definitely given away.
How old were you, Diane?
And, well, 3rd grade, so I'm very young.
About 8 years
About
old?
8 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, it was,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I would have been 8 years old because it was in between that time as when the bio dad.
So evident. I mean, obviously your parents reconciled, but this was at one of the breakups. And how long did you live with these people?
About 3 years.
Okay, wow.
Two to three.
How did you cope with that?
You know, they treated me like their own. I mean, it was, I look back now, and of course, I'm a lot older, and I look at that as maybe a protection when I look at it.
Sure.
Because they were very kind to me. For the first time ever, I could actually concentrate on school. I was doing better. I felt more important to somebody anyway. I had, at the time, that's when high heel dolls were fashionable, and Belle made me, I mean, my high heel doll had the best wardrobe ever, you know.
That's very important to
It
a
was
young
very
lady.
important at that
Absolutely.
age, because I never had those things before.
So here's this well-placed home, but you said something in passing a minute ago, uncared for, no food
Yes.
in the home.
Yes.
So there was some things, basics,
Yeah.
we call it neglect. Did you feel neglected in
Oh,
that?
absolutely. I look back now, and it was definitely
Just neglect.
neglect. Of course, at that age, I had no idea what that was. But I just remember my cousin Jim Lee coming to visit. This was before I was dropped off at Bell's. And this was pretty much an empty apartment. And there again, I remember my window being my coping, and that's where I look out at night. But I remember my cousin Jim Lee saying, "There's nothing in this house to eat but popcorn, and there's no grease to pop it in." It was before microwave popcorn. So I think that sits in my mind. I didn't think then, as a small child, that I was hungry. I don't remember being hungry. There was really no food in that house, so it must have been.
So you don't remember coping
know.
with that actually before they dropped you off, that coping with enough food?
No, I don't.
Okay.
It just seems,
Well, you kept escaping.
yes.
So yeah.
Yeah.
All right. How did you cope with being dropped off and being there in this home?
It was a little difficult at the beginning, but as I said, they very much accepted me, loved me. They had a dog, they had an established house. Belle made a little playhouse for me. For the first time, I did feel like a real little girl that was being treated like other little girls that I would see in school.
So some personhood there,
Yes,
some value.
exactly.
But so coping in the hard transition, what did that look like?
Probably the first few days it was very sad and very lonely and very insecure.
Okay, so those are the
Frightened
feelings.
me.
How did you cope?
Again, I would go to my room, the room that they had made for me. It was in the time of Elvis, and I had a couple little Elvis 45s.
Right.
So I would, and my posters and things, so I would escape into that fantasy world of, what it might be like or whatever. It was an escape, but I would get off by myself, and,
Okay.
yeah,
Wow. And that lasted for 3 years, huh?
yes.
Okay. Anything else about these years as far as parents? We're going to do a little bit of school next, and so I want to make sure that we've got everything that you want to put out. We've got a lot in this history, but anything else that you can think of that you think I should know?
That's
Okay.
pretty
So
much covers it, unless, my grandmother played a big part in all of that as far as my messages.
all right, so we should definitely, before we go to school, we should definitely diagram
Mm-hmm.
the history on Grandma, huh?
Yes.
And this is your mother's
Mother.
because you said I don't know about your stepfather's parents, any connection?
They were both passed away.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah.
So Grandma, and this is Mom's mom.
Mm-hmm.
So describe Mom's mom for me, personality-wise, character-wise. Who was Grandma to you?
She wasn't Grandma. She was a threat,
Okay.
a very huge, looming threat.
So I can just stop right there. How did you feel in relationship?
Scared to death.
Okay. That terrified, huh?
Yeah, terrified pretty much. But I remember she had a soft side, you know, she'd sit and sing the old hymns in her rocking chair while chewing her snuff and
Okay.
she was from the South. They were all from Kentucky, could you guess? No. And so she was, you know, pretty bold woman, but yet she also at times had a soft side, especially, you know, with my sister, and, you know, very loving to her.
But did you see that soft side?
No, I did not.
Okay.
She,
So that soft side to others, as I note here, so not to
yes,
you.
that was to others.
Well, how'd that make you feel? She would see her.
I felt like something was wrong with me. By then, I'm getting, why am I so different?
Mm. Right.
You know, because they love my brother, she loved my brother, my sister, but there was something must have been wrong with me.
Well, so how'd you cope with Grandma and all that? You've got some terrified, scared feelings, something's wrong with me, why am I so different? How do you cope with that?
With Grandma, you know, I of course cry silently, but I worked really hard to try to win her affection.
So with some performance enters
Oh,
in.
absolutely. I would weed her garden. I would move rocks that were bigger than me. I did anything she asked me to do, and I would do it to the letter. And you know, it's not that she was standing there saying, do it to the letter, but I mean, I definitely detailed. And I got my drive for detail, I guess, there. And just she approved of those things, so that definitely made me feel like that just enlightened me a little bit, that I could earn. I could earn love.
Detailed and driven to more perfection, is that what?
Yes.
Okay.
Very, very much so.
All right.
And
tell me about your aha just then.
I guess my detailing and my drive to perfection and to try to be to do everything to the letter. Like there's no room for mistakes.
That all equals
There's
love.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So I mean, yeah. And I could earn it. You know, if I just did it like that, I could earn this person's.
Wow, that is aha.
It is though. Yeah. You know me well, so yeah. It's definitely. But with Grandma, it was futile, I guess. I don't know. But she, early on, just to put it into a real quick little story here, she told my mother when she was leaving my biological father, and she just had my sister, my mother decided she would go back to my biological father, and my grandmother was very angry that she was going to do that.
And you're 6 months old.
This was before I was born,
Okay.
or before I was conceived, actually, I guess. But she broke up with him, and the story was, and I used to hear this all the time. There again, I'm listening to everything.
Sure.
But she told my mother, if you go back to him and you get pregnant again and you have another child, I'll never accept that child. You will not bring that child here and have me accept it. And she pretty much stuck to her word.
Wow.
Because mother did do that. She did get pregnant for me and have me, and I was never really accepted by my grandmother except right before she passed away.
And so that just reinforces that there's something wrong with me, and why am I so, because of the way that she treated you. Wow.
Correct. And of course now I can look at it and see that was, you know, how crazy that was.
That was about her, not you. You can see that from
yeah,
older age,
from afar now and going through, you know, the Grace Life and everything.
But that living, that's
Yeah.
terrible. Talk to me about some more feelings other than scared to death and terrified. What other feelings can you look at that feeling
Just
for?
like if I could just disappear and not be here, it would be so much better for everybody. You
Okay.
know, because obviously I must be in the way if I'm given to these people later. You know, I was given to Belle and Kenny for a while. Then it was like evidently getting me out of the way made their life better. So,
Tell me about feelings of that. Look at your healing word list if you need to.
just unimportant and broken. There must be something wrong. I was flawed. So, it was the way I was acting or something I was doing. I was very confused as to
Sure, well, here comes that confusion again, right?
exactly.
Oh, well, there's one category that you've not talked much about, and that's anger. To be treated and neglected, and so I would use the words grossly. I'm not hearing any of the anger words.
I think if I have to pick from that list, it would be dismayed, frustrated.
Those are very low intensity level
Mhm.
anger words.
I don't know that I've ever, when I look at those words, it wasn't intense. And I don't know if that's a suppressed area or just something, because I don't remember ever being furious or hostile.
Is it more?
Irritated, yes, irritated at my home life, I'm sure.
Okay. Is it more in the
I think
confused?
I accepted that there was something so totally wrong with me that I couldn't project all of that on anyone else. I don't even know that I projected the heavy duty stuff.
Well, not even so much as projected, but feel it yourself. What does being abandoned and rejected and confused all the time really feel like? What does that really feel like? And would that come out as any anger? That's just something I want you to pray for, pray
I
through.
will, because I don't know that I ever felt anger or sad.
Well, let me ask you this. Have you dealt with depression in your life?
Yes.
Okay. So we have this little formula.
Okay.
I will say it's a formula. So you have some expectations. I think as a child, we probably expect to be treated and have 3 meals a day and basically, do our chores and not get fussed at. But we definitely don't expect to live in an outrageous home of turbulence,
Mm-hmm.
whether we consciously know that or not. So there's a constant disappointment and discouragement. Would you? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Probably, well, the disappointment, definitely.
Okay.
But I
Discouragement that things aren't. You've got to go imagine your life here,
Yeah,
because the reality's pretty grotesque.
it is.
And
It
see,
is.
if when you factor all
Absolutely.
of that, discouragement becomes despair, which is hopelessness, and bam, you're in a box of depression.
Right.
Just want you to be thinking through that. This is for your healing. That's actually a little bit of counseling in the midst of, the history, which I normally don't do. But there's a progression here, and I guess a concern of mine taking your history would be, I don't see that connection to, wow, this makes me mad.
I think it was just my normal. Like, I really didn't have, and being a loner and not really seeing other lives until I was older to know what it was supposed to be. I think I accepted that home life because that was my normal.
Well, when you're
And
a
that was
loner and you have an imaginary world going on, that there's no need to deal. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it just builds up. So that's something that hopefully we can pursue as we go along. Just take note of that. But I would like to have you begin to pray about that, and we will come back to that later on in our time together.
Older in life, the mad would come in. I don't
Oh,
know. I still-
okay.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. Anything else about Grandma?
No,
And how old were you when Grandma left us?
I was probably 14.
Okay, so right after you became a Christian, did she?
Right.
Yeah.
So I was able to handle that, and she was living with us at the time of her death as
Okay.
well. She'd just gotten out of the hospital, so. And I do believe in her way, she did accept me, and there again, she had her kind of come to Jesus as well
Okay, good.
while she was in the hospital.
So she
there
did
was
die a
some
believer?
forgiving, yes.
Oh, good.
And there was some forgiveness there as well. And a silly way that I know that is that I was headed out the front door to go to school, and I wore a headscarf that her dear friend, that was back in the Head Start, you know, you had the
Yes. Oh, yes.
60s hairdos.
Oh, yes.
So you had to protect that. But I wore a little lightweight a scarf of hers, and I was headed out the door to go to school, my sister and I, and Grandma was saying goodbye to us, and we were saying goodbye to her, and she said, Diana Kay. And, you know, and they do, you know,
They
the
call
whole
the whole
name.
name.
So I'm like, oh my, oh dear, I'm dead, you know. And she said, you know whose scarf you have on your head? And I said, yes, ma'am. She said, that scarf was given me by Hazel, my friend. And I said, yes, ma'am. And I almost reached to take it off, and she says, well, honey, you wear it to school today, but you make sure that you bring it home with you tonight. It's okay. That was the kindest words I ever got from my grandmother.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and that was actually the day she died.
Oh.
Yeah, we came home, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Came home to that. Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. Very good.